My predecessor at the Denali Grand Hotel left exactly one thing: a voice recorder with a single message. Room 217 turns on at midnight. Don't go up there. The guests who check in after closing never check out. The register writes itself. If you see your own name appear, you have 3 days to leave Alaska. I thought Mike was having a mental breakdown until I did my first night patrol and found fresh footprints in the dust of the abandoned lobby, leading from the entrance to the stairwell. The snow outside was undisturbed. No one had come through that door. My name is Daniel Cross, and I took this job out of desperation. After losing my position at a tech company in Seattle, I'd burned through my savings faster than expected when I saw the listing for a winter caretaker at the Denali Grand Hotel. 5 months, $30,000, housing included. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to reset my life while earning decent money. The employment agency in Anchorage had been oddly vague about the details. The woman who interviewed me, Mrs. Chen, kept emphasizing that the position required discretion and strict adherence to protocol. The hotel has been closed since 1970, she'd explained, sliding a folder across her desk. Your job is simple: patrol the premises, prevent vandalism, ensure the building remains secure through the winter months. The owner is considering renovation, so maintaining the property's current state is essential. Why does an abandoned hotel need 24-hour security? I'd asked. Insurance requirements, she'd said quickly. Too quickly. The building is historically significant. There have been incidents with urban explorers and squatters. Your presence is mainly deterrent. The contract included an unusually detailed section about non-interaction with perceived irregularities and a substantial penalty clause for premature termination of employment. But $30,000 for 5 months of walking around an empty building. I signed. The drive from Anchorage to the hotel took 6 hours through increasingly desolate terrain. The last 20 miles were on a private access road that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. My SUV struggled through the October snow, and twice I wondered if I'd have to turn back. The Denali Grand Hotel emerged from the forest like something from a Stephen King novel. 5 stories of faded grandeur. Its Art Deco architecture stood in stark contrast to the wild Alaskan landscape surrounding it. The windows were mostly intact but dark, giving the building the appearance of a massive creature with hundreds of closed eyes. Mike Garrett, the previous security guard, met me in the parking lot. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous twitch in his hands that suggested too much coffee or too little sleep. Daniel, his voice was hoarse. Thank God you're here. I've got everything set up in the security office. Generators running, heat works in about a third of the building, and there's enough supplies to last 2 weeks before the first delivery. He handed me a ring of keys that must have weighed 5 pounds. These open pretty much everything except the guest rooms. Those have been sealed since the closure. All of them. Mike hesitated. Most of them. Room 217's door. It's complicated. You'll see. We walked through the main entrance, and I got my first real look at the lobby. Despite decades of abandonment, it retained an eerie elegance. The marble floors were covered in dust, but uncracked. The chandelier, massive and intricate, hung from the vaulted ceiling like a crystal spider web. The registration desk stretched along one wall, its mahogany surface warped but intact. This is where I found the recorder, Mike said, pointing to a spot behind the desk. From the security guard before me. Tom, something. Never met him. What happened to him? Same thing that happens to everyone who stays too long. They leave. Mike's laugh was bitter. Usually in the middle of their contract, forfeiting the money. He showed me to the security office, a converted storage room behind the kitchen. It had a cot, a desk, a small refrigerator, and a bank of monitors connected to the few functioning security cameras. Cameras only work in the lobby, main hallways, and kitchen, Mike explained. Everything else is dead. You'll have to do physical patrols. How often? Every 4 hours is what they say. But honestly, once at midnight, once at dawn, that's enough. He paused. More than enough, actually. Mike spent the next hour showing me around the accessible parts of the hotel. The kitchen, with its industrial equipment slowly rusting. The ballroom, where sheets covered shapes that might have been furniture, or might have been something else. The restaurant, tables still set with dusty china as if waiting for guests who would never arrive. The second floor is where things get unusual, Mike said as we stood at the bottom of the grand staircase. Rooms 201 through 230 are on the north side. They're all sealed, locked from the inside apparently, though nobody knows how. The south side, 231 through 260, those are accessible, but I wouldn't recommend going in them. Why not? You'll feel it when you get up there. It's wrong, like the air is too thick or the walls are watching you. He shook his head. I know how that sounds. What about room 217? Mike's face went pale. Second floor, middle of the north hallway. You can't miss it. The door is different from the others. Newer, like it was replaced recently, though nobody admits to replacing it. And the lights, every night, midnight to dawn, like clockwork. The whole wing has no power. I've checked the breakers, the wiring, everything. But that room lights up anyway. We returned to the security office, where Mike pulled out a thick logbook. Previous guards kept notes, he said, flipping through pages of different handwriting. Goes back about 15 years. Before that, I guess nobody bothered. I skimmed through entries. November 3rd, 2009. Heard piano music from ballroom. No piano there anymore. Checked morning. RV, December 15th, 2011. Footsteps on third floor all night. Fresh snow on stairs in morning, despite no windows broken. JL, January 8th, 2015. Guest register has 12 new names. Handwriting looks old. Dates are all from 1970. MP, February 22nd, 2018. Saw someone in 217 window from outside. When I checked, door was still locked. Room empty, but warm. TK October 2nd, 2023. They're getting more active. Register fills up faster now. Don't look at the names. Don't recognize the names. MG. That last entry was Mike's, dated just 3 days ago. The guest register, I said. You mentioned it writes itself. Mike walked to the registration desk and opened the large leather-bound book. The first several pages were filled with entries from 1970 and earlier. The ink faded, but legible. Then blank pages. Then, starting about 20 pages in, new entries in different handwriting styles. Mr. and Mrs. James Patterson, room 314, November 1st, 2023. Miss Emily Harrison, room 108, November 3rd, 2023. Dr. Richard Stallworth, room 217, November 5th, 2023. The dates were all recent, all during Mike's tenure. I've watched the cameras, Mike said. Nobody comes in. Nobody approaches the desk. But every morning, there are new names. And always, someone checks into 217. Have you ever gone up there? When the lights are on, Mike's laugh was shaky. Once, about a month ago, I made it to the second floor landing. The temperature drops about 20 degrees up there. The hallway to 217 was occupied. Shadows. People-shaped shadows standing in the hallway, moving. just standing, facing the door to 217 inches. He rubbed his face. I came back down and haven't been up since. Mike gathered his belongings quickly after that, eager to leave before dark. He handed me the voice recorder at the door. Tom left this for me. I'm leaving it for you. Maybe you'll be smarter than us and actually listen. Any other advice? Mike paused at the door. Snow already beginning to fall outside. Don't try to understand it. Don't investigate. Just do your rounds, collect your check, and leave after 5 months. And Daniel, if you see your name in that register, don't wait 3 days. Leave immediately. He drove away, his taillights disappearing into the snowy forest, leaving me alone with the Denali Grand Hotel. I spent the first few hours setting up my space in the security office, trying to create some sense of normalcy. I'd brought books, a laptop with downloaded movies, enough instant coffee to last a month. The generator hummed steadily, providing power to my small corner of the massive building. At 11:45 p.m., I decided to do my first official round. I started with the lobby, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The chandelier cast strange shadows as I moved, creating the illusion of movement in my peripheral vision. I checked the guest register. No new entries since Mike had left. The kitchen was next. The industrial refrigerators stood open and empty, their interiors black with mold. The prep surfaces were covered in dust, so thick it looked like snow. In the back corner, I found something odd. A coffee cup on the counter, relatively clean, with dried coffee residue in the bottom. Recent. The ballroom was worse at night. The sheet-covered shapes seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. The parquet floor creaked under my weight in some places, but not others, as if there were hollow spots beneath. At 11:58, I stood at the bottom of the grand staircase, looking up into darkness. I had 2 minutes before midnight, before room 217 would light up according to Mike and everyone before him. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step groaning under my weight. The temperature did drop, just as Mike had said. My breath became visible by the time I reached the landing. The second-floor hallway stretched in both directions. To the south, darkness and closed doors. To the north, the same, except at exactly midnight, light appeared under one of the doors halfway down the north corridor. Not electric light. It had a softer, warmer quality, like candlelight or gas lamps. I walked toward it, my footsteps muffled by a runner carpet that should have rotted away decades ago, but somehow remained intact. The other doors I passed were clearly abandoned. Gaps at the bottom showed only darkness, and dust had accumulated on the handles. But room 217's door was different, newer as Mike had said, made of polished oak that gleamed in my flashlight beam. The brass numbers were bright, untarnished, and beneath the door, that warm light spilled out, along with something else. The sound of conversation, muted, like it was coming through water, but definitely voices, multiple people talking, laughing occasionally, the clink of glasses. I stood there, frozen, listening. Then, clearly, I heard someone say, "He's here." The conversation stopped. The light under the door flickered. Then slowly, I heard footsteps approaching from the other side. They stopped right at the door. I backed away, my hand going to the radio on my belt. Though who would I call? Who would come? The doorknob began to turn. I ran, not proud of it, but I ran. Down the hallway, down the stairs, taking them 3 at a time, not stopping until I was back in the security office with the door locked. My hands were shaking as I opened the logbook to write my first entry. But when I flipped to the next blank page, I found something already written there, in handwriting I didn't recognize. D. Cross, room 217, 3 days hence. My blood went cold. That was my name. and 3 days from now would be November 9th. I grabbed the guest register from the lobby, brought it back to the office. There, in fresh ink that hadn't been there an hour ago, Mr. Daniel Cross, room 217, November 9th, 2023. According to Mike, according to Tom's recording, I had 3 days to leave Alaska, but it was already October 6th. I just started this job, and I desperately needed the money. Besides, these were just stories, just previous guards getting spooked by an old building in their own imagination, weren't they? I looked at the monitors showing the empty lobby, except it wasn't empty anymore. A figure stood at the registration desk, bent over the guest book, writing. The image was grainy, black and white, but I could see enough. It wore what looked like a bellhop uniform from the 1970s. I blinked, and the figure was gone. But when I went to check the register an hour later, there were 3 new entries, all dated November 9th. All for room 217, all with names I recognized from my family tree. My grandfather, my father, my brother. None of them were alive. I spent the rest of that first night staring at the monitor, watching the lobby. The figure in the bellhop uniform didn't return, but something else happened around 3 a.m. The chandelier began swaying, not violently, just a gentle back and forth motion, like someone was pushing it. There was no wind inside the building, no earthquakes in Alaska that night. It swayed for exactly 17 minutes, then stopped. I wrote everything in the logbook, trying to maintain some semblance of professional security guard protocol. But how do you report that your deceased relatives have apparently made reservations at an abandoned hotel? When dawn finally came, I did another round. The footprints I'd seen in the dust the night before, the ones leading from the entrance to the stairs, were gone. The dust was undisturbed, as if someone had carefully reset it. But there were new disturbances elsewhere. In the ballroom, one of the sheet-covered shapes had been moved about 3 feet. In the kitchen, all the cabinet doors stood open, though I distinctly remembered them being closed. The second floor was worse in daylight. I could see the hallway clearly now, and Mike had been right. It felt wrong. The walls seemed to lean in slightly, and the pattern on the carpet appeared to shift if you didn't look at it directly. Room 217's door was closed, looking perfectly ordinary, except for its incongruous newness. I tried the handle. Locked, as expected, but the wood was warm to the touch, as if there was a fire burning inside. I went back to the security office and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that register entry, November 9th. 3 days from now. I pulled out my laptop and tried to research the hotel's history, but the internet connection was spotty at best. What little I found confirmed the basic facts. The hotel had closed in November 1970 after a fire in the East Wing killed 7 people. The damage had been minimal, contained to just a few rooms, but the owner had shut down operations immediately afterward. What the articles didn't explain was why the owner had continued paying for maintenance and security for over 50 years. That afternoon, I called the employment agency from my satellite phone. Workforce Solutions. This is Mrs. Chen. This is Daniel Cross. I started at the Denali Grand Hotel yesterday. Oh yes, Mr. Cross. Is everything satisfactory? I have some questions about the previous security guards, specifically about the turnover rate. There was a pause. Has there been an incident? What kind of incident would you be referring to? Mr. Cross, your contract clearly states, my name has appeared in the hotel register for November 9th. According to the previous guard, this means I have 3 days to leave Alaska. Silence. Then, I see. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate. That's all you have to say. Mr. Cross, if you choose to terminate your contract early, you forfeit all payment and will be charged a penalty of... I hung up. That night I prepared differently. I set up a video camera on a tripod in the lobby, aimed at the registration desk. I placed another in the second-floor hallway, pointing at room 217. I wanted evidence of whatever was happening. At 11:30 p.m., I positioned myself at the bottom of the stairs with a clear view of both the lobby and the second-floor landing. I was determined to see who or what was writing in that register. At 11:45, the temperature began dropping. My breath misted in the air. At 11:50, I heard it. The elevator. The elevator that hadn't worked in decades, that had no power, no cables, the sound ascending, the ding as it reached the second floor. At 11:55, footsteps in the hallway above, multiple sets, moving toward room 217. At midnight exactly, the light appeared under 217's door. But this time, I saw something else. Other doors on the second floor, 209, 214, 223. They all had light beneath them too. The entire north wing had suddenly come alive. I climbed the stairs slowly, video camera in hand. At the landing, I froze. The hallway was full of people, or things that looked like people. They were translucent, like projections, dressed in clothing from the 1970s. They mingled in the hallway as if at a party, holding drinks, laughing silently. None of them noticed me. Room 217's door was open. Inside, I could see a gathering in full swing. Men in wide-lapelled suits, women in cocktail dresses, all of them slightly transparent. All of them acting as if it was the most normal thing in the world. At the center of the room, facing the doorway, sat a man at a desk. He was more solid than the others, more real. He wore a hotel manager's uniform with a gold name tag I couldn't quite read. He looked up and saw me. Unlike the others, he saw me. He smiled and beckoned me forward. I took one step into the room, and the temperature plummeted so fast my next breath came out as a cloud of ice crystals. The party guests all turned to look at me simultaneously, their faces shifting from pleasure to something else. Hunger, maybe, or recognition. The manager stood up. When he spoke, his voice sounded like it was coming through an old radio. "Mr. Cross, we've been expecting you. Who are you?" "I'm Harold Brennan, the last manager of the Denali Grand. These are my guests from our final night, November 8th, 1970. He gestured to the others. "We've been waiting for someone to complete our registry. The fire..." "There was no fire," Brennan said. "That was the cover story. What happened here was far more unusual." He opened a ledger on his desk. I recognized it. It was identical to the guest register downstairs, but older, more worn. On November 8th, 1970, we had a special guest check into room 217. He signed the register as Mr. Terminus. He paid in advance for a very long stay, until November 9th, 2023. To be precise, my blood went cold. That was 3 days from now. He was not from here, Brennan continued. Not from anywhere mappable, but he needed a place to stay while he conducted his business. We accommodated him, as was our way. But Mr. Terminus had specific requirements. He needed anchors, he said. Souls to keep the doorway stable. Doorway to where? Brennan's smile was sad. To wherever he came from. And on November 8th, he collected his anchors. Everyone would tell that night. Staff, guests, everyone. We didn't die, Mr. Cross. We were transformed into something else. Boundary markers, keeping the way open for his return. And now his stay is almost over. He'll check out on November 9th. But the doorway requires one more anchor, Someone from the present complete the bridge between then and now. He tapped the ledger. That's why your name appeared. I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut. The party guests pressed closer, their translucent hands reaching for me. It's not painful, Brennan said. You simply become part of the hotel. Forever, checking in guests, maintaining the rooms, keeping everything ready for when Mr. Terminus needs to return. No, you don't have a choice, Mr. Cross. Your name is in the register. The contract is binding. I remembered Mike's words. If you see your name, leave immediately. But I also remembered something else from the employment contract. The clause about non-interaction with perceived irregularities. I don't consent, I said. My employment contract specifically forbids me from interacting with guests. Brennan's expression flickered, uncertain. You're already interacting. No, I'm observing an irregularity and refusing to engage, as per my contract with Workforce Solutions, dated October 5th, 2023, Section 3, Subsection 2. The room wavered like a bad TV signal. The party guests stepped back, confused. You can't use legal technicalities against what? Ghosts, entities that don't legally exist. Either you're real, in which case contracts matter, or you're not, in which case you have no power to enforce anything. The room began to fade. Brennan's face contorted with anger or fear. I couldn't tell which. He won't be pleased, Brennan said as he became more transparent. Mr. Terminus doesn't like broken agreements. Then he can take it up with my employer. The light went out. The door opened. I stumbled into the hallway, which was now completely dark and empty. No party guests, no lights under doors, just an abandoned corridor in an abandoned hotel. I ran back to the security office and grabbed my things. Mike was right. 3 days was too long to wait. I needed to leave now. But when I reached my SUV, it wouldn't start. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. I checked under the hood. The spark plugs were gone. Not damaged, not broken, gone. I went back inside to use the satellite phone. Dead. The regular phone in the office, also dead. I was trapped. The next 2 days passed in a surreal blur. During daylight hours, the hotel seemed almost normal, just an abandoned building slowly decaying. But at night, it transformed. The lights in room 217 came on at midnight, without fail. The elevator ran. Voices echoed through the halls, and the guest register kept filling. By November 8th, there were dozens of new entries, all for November 9th, all for room 217. Some names I recognized from historical records I'd found in the hotel office. Guests who died in the fire of 1970. Others were completely unknown. On the morning of November 8th, I made one last attempt to leave on foot. I packed supplies and started hiking down the access road. After 3 hours of walking, I found myself back at the hotel's entrance. The road had somehow curved back on itself. I tried again, marking trees as I went. Same result. The hotel wouldn't let me leave. That night, I didn't bother with patrols. I barricaded myself in the security office and waited. At 11:30, I heard footsteps in the kitchen. At 11:45, voices in the lobby. At 11:55, the elevator started its impossible journey. At exactly midnight on November 9th, someone knocked on the security office door. Mr. Cross, it was Brennan's voice. Mr. Terminus would like to check out now. I didn't answer. Mr. Cross, please. He can't leave without the final anchor, without you. Still, I said nothing. The knocking became pounding. Then silence. Then a new voice, one that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was deep, resonant, and completely inhuman. Daniel Cross. Every instinct told me not to answer, but my mouth opened anyway. Yes? You have been selected as the final anchor. This is an honor. I decline the honor. There was a sound that might have been laughter. "You cannot decline. Your name is written. Written by who?" "I didn't write it. Names write themselves when fate demands it. I don't believe in fate. Your belief is not required." The door began to dissolve. Not break, not burn, simply cease to exist, atom by atom. Beyond it stood something that might once have been human-shaped, but was now something else. It was tall, too tall for the doorway, and seemed to exist in more dimensions than 3. Looking at it hurt. "Come," it said. "Your room is ready." I made it to Anchorage by noon the next day, exhausted and running on pure adrenaline. The first thing I did was find an internet cafe and research everything I could about the Denali Grand Hotel. What I found made my blood run cold. The fire of 1970 was indeed a cover story, but not for what Brennan had claimed. According to police records I found in digitized newspaper archives, 7 people had simply vanished on November 8, 1970. No bodies, no fire damage, just gone. The hotel owner, a man named William Terminus, had closed the property immediately and disappeared. The fire story was circulated to avoid panic and media attention. But here's what made me shiver. William Terminus had owned the hotel since it was built in 1923. Photos from the 1920s showed him looking exactly as Mr. Terminus had appeared to me. Tall, ageless, wrong. Either he aged remarkably well, or he was something that merely pretended to be human. I found a forum for urban explorers who'd tried to visit the hotel over the years. Most reported being unable to find it, despite having exact GPS coordinates. The few who did locate it described experiences similar to mine. Names appearing in registers, lights in room 217, the feeling of being watched. One user, Explorer Mike 99, claimed to have been a security guard there. His last post was dated 6 months ago. "If your name appears, you have 3 days." I'm leaving tonight. That had to be Mike. I sent him a private message. "This is Daniel." I got out. "How are you?" The response came within minutes. "You actually left? How?" We exchanged phone numbers and talked for 2 hours. Mike had made it to California, as far from Alaska as he could get while staying in the US. He'd been having nightmares about room 217, about Brennan, about the things that weren't quite human wandering those halls. The 3-day rule, I told him. It's not exact. I think it's more of a deadline for them, not us. If we don't comply within 3 days, their claim expires. But nobody ever figured that out before. Maybe they did. Maybe that's why the hotel needs new security guards so often. People who successfully leave don't talk about it, don't want to think about it. Mike was quiet for a moment. "Daniel, there's something else. I've been tracking the other guards who left. Tom, the one who left me the recorder, he died 3 months after leaving. Car accident. Sarah, before him, heart attack at 32. Every guard who's left that place dies within a year." My mouth went dry. That could be coincidence. Could be. Or could be that Mr. Terminus doesn't like loose ends. That night I stayed in a cheap motel, unable to sleep. Every time I passed by, casting shadow through the window, I thought of the hotel. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps in an abandoned hallway. At 3 a.m., the phone in my room rang. The motel used modern phones with caller ID. The screen showed Denali Grand Hotel. I didn't answer. It rang again at 3:17, and 3:33, and 3:47. At 4 a.m., I heard a knock at my door. 3 measured knocks, just like Brennan had done at the security office. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but there was something on the floor, an envelope. I waited until sunrise to retrieve it. Inside was a single piece of paper with elegant, old-fashioned handwriting. Mr. Cross, your cleverness has been noted and, admittedly, appreciated. You found a loophole in an ancient contract, something few have managed. However, the hotel requires a caretaker. If not you, then someone else must take your place. You have shown intelligence and resourcefulness. I propose an alternative arrangement. Return to your position for the winter months, as originally agreed. I will ensure no harm comes to you, and you will receive your full payment plus a substantial bonus. In exchange, you will help me find a permanent solution to our staffing challenges. Room 217 awaits your decision. W. Terminus. I burned the letter in the motel parking lot. Over the next week, I tried to return to normal life. I found a temporary job at a warehouse in Anchorage, stayed in a hostel, tried to forget about the hotel. But every night the phone would ring at 3 a.m. Every morning, there would be an envelope under my door. The messages became increasingly insistent. Then, on November 17th, I got a call from Mrs. Chen at the employment agency. Mr. Cross, I'm calling about your position at the Denali Grand Hotel. I'm not going back. I understand. However, we've had an applicant for the position, a young man named James Patterson. He's quite eager to start immediately. James Patterson. That name was familiar. I pulled up my photos from the hotel on my phone, scrolling to the picture I'd taken of the guest register. Mr. and Mrs. James Patterson. Room 314. November 1st, 2023. Don't send him, I said urgently. Mrs. Chen, you can't send anyone else to that hotel. Mr. Cross, we have a contract with the owner. The owner is not human, Mrs. Chen. You know this. You have to know this. Silence on the line. Then, Mr. Cross, I'm going to speak frankly. The Denali Grand account pays our agency very, very well. Well enough that we can overlook certain irregularities. If you're unwilling to fulfill your contract, we'll find someone who will. Even if it kills them. No one has died at people leave, yes, but check what happens to them after they leave. Check how long they live. She hung up. That night I couldn't stand it anymore. I drove back toward the hotel, not to return to work, but to warn James Patterson if he showed up. The access road was exactly as I remembered. Rough, isolated, gradually ascending into the mountains. But when I reached the spot where the hotel should have been, I found only forest. No building, no parking lot, no sign that anything had ever been there. I checked my GPS. These were the exact coordinates. I got out and walked around, looking for any trace of the structure I'd spent a week in. Nothing. Even the trail I remembered was gone, covered by undergrowth that looked decades old. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The hotel appears only to those who are meant to find it. Your name has been removed from the register. You are no longer welcome. But remember, Mr. Cross, every door you open, every shadow you see, every unexplained sound in the night, we remain connected. The hotel remembers. I drove back to Anchorage and immediately booked a flight to Florida, as far from Alaska as I could afford to go. It's been 6 months now. I work construction again, live in a small apartment near the beach, try not to think about the Denali Grand Hotel. But sometimes, especially on cold nights that remind me of Alaska, I hear it. Elevator music from the 1970s, playing from somewhere I can't identify. My neighbors say they don't hear anything. Last week, I got a package with no return address. Inside was a brass key with a tag. Room 217, permanent reservation. There was also a newspaper clipping from the Anchorage Daily News. Missing person. James Patterson, 25, was reported missing after failing to return from a caretaker position at a remote property north of Denali. His vehicle was found abandoned on an access road, but search teams have been unable to locate any buildings in the area. This is the fifth such disappearance in the region in the past 2 years. I keep the key in a safety deposit box at my bank. I tell myself it's evidence in case anyone ever believes my story. But late at night, I sometimes dream about room 217, about the warm light under the door, about the party that never ends. And in those dreams, Brennan always says the same thing. Checkout time is never, Mr. Cross. The hotel is patient. The hotel remembers. And one day, you'll return. They always do. I've started researching ways to destroy entities like Mr. Terminus, salt, iron, religious symbols. Nothing in the folklore seems quite right for something that exists between dimensions, something that uses contracts and bureaucracy as weapons. But I keep looking, because Mike was right about the pattern. Tom died 3 months after leaving. Sarah lasted 6 months. Mike made it 8 months before his accident, a gas leak in his apartment that investigators couldn't explain. It's been 6 months for me now. Every morning, I check my car's brakes. I test my food for strange tastes. I avoid standing near windows in tall buildings. But I know it's coming. The hotel doesn't forget debts. 3 nights ago, I woke up at 3 a.m. to find my apartment door open. Not broken, not forced, just standing wide open. Snow was falling in my living room. Snow in Florida in June. I closed the door and went back to bed, but I could hear them now. Footsteps in the hallway outside, the ding of an elevator that my building doesn't have, and worst of all, the scratching of a pen on paper, like someone signing their name in a guest register. This morning, I found a business card on my kitchen table. Denali Grand Hotel, always open. Always waiting, your room is ready. Below that, in handwriting, I recognized as my own, despite never having written it. D. Cross, permanent guest, room 217. I'm writing this all down, posting it everywhere I can, because I need people to know. The hotel is real. Mr. Terminus is real. And if you ever see a job listing for winter caretaker at the Denali Grand Hotel, no matter how much they're offering, no matter how desperate you are, don't take it. Because check-in is optional, but check-out is never. Update, posted by forum administrator. This account has been inactive since June 18th. According to news reports, Daniel Cross was reported missing on June 20th after failing to show. His apartment was found empty, with the front door standing open. The only unusual detail noted by investigators was trace amounts of snow on the carpet, despite it being summer in Florida. His whereabouts remain unknown. Update 2, posted by forum administrator. We received the following message from an IP address that traces to somewhere in Alaska. Mr. Cross has returned to his position. He is a permanent member of our staff now. Room 217 is occupied. The hotel is satisfied. Management. Update 3, posted by new user Mike G_1999. Don't believe the updates above. Daniel figured out something important. The hotel needs willing participation. The contracts, the 3-day deadline, even the hauntings. They're all designed to make you choose to return. If you never choose, if you never go back, they can't fully claim you. I've lasted longer than the others because I understood this. The accidents that killed the other guards. Those happened to people who were planning to go back, who were considering returning to Alaska. Stay away. Stay far away. And whatever you do, never open any door numbered 217. Not in any building, anywhere. The numbers are spreading. The hotel isn't just in Alaska anymore. It's growing, one room at a time, in hotels and motels across the country. When you check in somewhere and they offer you room 217, ask for a different room. Trust me. This forum thread has been locked due to unusual activity